My life shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. It wasn't a sudden, explosive break, but a slow, insidious crack that spread from the edges, splintering everything I thought I knew about family, trust, and the people I loved. It started with a phone call from my Aunt Carol. Her voice, usually syrupy sweet, was coated in ice. "Sarah," she began, bypassing any pleasantries. "We need to talk about David. Urgently. My husband, David. My quiet, steady rock of a husband. What could Aunt Carol possibly need to talk to me about him urgently?" Unease coiled in my stomach. Aunt Carol, along with her husband, Uncle Robert, and my cousin Mark, held the purse strings to the family's modest but significant legacy. A trust fund set up by my grandmother years ago for educational purposes and as a safety net for future generations. It wasn't millions, but it was substantial enough, built painstakingly over decades. "What about David?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. We had just paid off our student loans. Things were finally feeling stable. David was a software engineer. I was a graphic designer. We lived comfortably in our small house in the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy. "There's been a discrepancy," she said, the word dripping with implied suspicion. "A large sum is missing from the trust." My blood ran cold. "Missing? How large?" $500,000, she stated flatly. "And the transfers, they trace back to accounts linked to David." My world tilted. $500,000. David. It was impossible. David, who double-checked every bill, who agonized over overdraft fees, who was almost too honest for his own good. The man wouldn't steal a penny, let alone $500,000. "That's insane, Aunt Carol. David would never—" "The evidence is clear, Sarah," she interrupted, her voice hardening further. "The digital footprints lead right to him. We consulted with the bank, the trustees." "You consulted? Without talking to us?" My voice was rising, now the shock giving way to a fierce, protective anger. "We had to confirm the details first. It's undeniable. We're heartbroken, Sarah. That David would do this." Heartbroken? They sounded less heartbroken and more triumphant, like they had caught a rat in the pantry. The implication wasn't just that money was missing. It was that David, my husband, a part of their family by marriage, was a thief. The conversation devolved quickly from there. Accusations were laid bare, thinly veiled threats about involving law enforcement if the money wasn't returned. They spoke as if David had already confessed, as if his guilt was a foregone conclusion. I hung up the phone, trembling, tears streaming down my face, not just from the shock of the accusation, but from the sheer brutal betrayal of it. My family, my mother's sister, her brother-in-law, my cousin who I'd grown up with. They believed David was a criminal. Worse, they were actively pursuing this belief, gathering evidence, shutting us out. David came home to find me a mess. When I told him, his reaction mirrored mine. Stunned disbelief, followed by hurt, then a quiet fury that scared me more than my own anger. He showed me his bank statements, his investment accounts. There was no sudden influx of cash, no unexplained $500,000. His digital life was an open book, meticulously organized and unremarkable. "This is insane, Sarah," he kept repeating, running a hand through his already messy hair. "Why would they think? How could they even trace something like that to me?" That night's sleep was impossible. My mind raced, piecing together every interaction, every look exchanged at the last family gathering. Had there been subtle shifts I missed? Had they always harbored some resentment towards David, maybe because he wasn't from their affluent social circle, or simply because I chose him? It felt personal, vicious. The next few days were a blur of frantic research and escalating tension. Aunt Carol sent a formal-looking email, carbon copying Uncle Robert and Mark, reiterating their claims and demanding a response within 48 hours, effectively cutting off any direct informal communication. They mentioned legal options. Legal options. For a civil matter, potentially. Or were they contemplating a criminal complaint? The thought made me physically ill. David, arrested. His career destroyed. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about reputation, about dignity, about our future. And it was about their malice. I saw it clearly now. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was an attack. An attack on David, yes, but through him. An attack on me, on our marriage, on the life we had built. That's when the shift happened. The raw pain and fear solidified into something cold and hard. They wanted a fight. They wanted to use the law to intimidate and potentially ruin us. Fine. Two could play that game. The idea of simply defending ourselves, of just clearing David's name, no longer felt sufficient. They had drawn blood. They had betrayed the fundamental bond of family. They deserved not just to be proven wrong, but to suffer consequences. Real consequences. Revenge. The word settled in my mind, heavy and potent. It wasn't a fleeting, angry thought. It was a deep, burning conviction. They had tried to take everything from us. I would take everything from them. Our first step was finding a lawyer. We couldn't afford just anyone. We needed someone sharp, someone who understood complex family dynamics and wasn't afraid to go head-to-head with people who likely saw themselves as untouchable. After several consultations that left me feeling either patronized or overwhelmed, we met Evelyn Reed. Evelyn was formidable. Mid-50s, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for being relentless but fair. She listened patiently as we laid out the situation, showing her the email, explaining the family history, David's background, and the impossibility of the accusation. When I finished, pouring out my hurt and rage, she leaned back in her chair. "Okay, Sarah," she said calmly. "Based on what you've told me, this sounds like a civil dispute, at least for now. If they haven't filed a police report or a formal complaint, they seem to be pursuing this through threats and intimidation, likely with the goal of forcing David to somehow return money he never took, or perhaps to extract something else. The trust adds a layer of complexity." She explained the legal landscape. If they formally accuse David publicly, or even just to a few key people, it could constitute defamation. If they pursued legal action against him without a valid basis, especially knowing the accusation was false, it could be malicious prosecution. These were grounds for us to countersue. "They're acting like bullies," I said, my voice tight. "And bullies often fold when you push back harder," Evelyn replied, a hint of steel in her voice. "We need to be proactive. We don't wait for them to file suit. We prepare our defense, and we explore our options for offense. If they've damaged David's reputation or caused emotional distress or tried to extort money, there are grounds for damages." This is where the conversation shifted from defense to my growing desire for vengeance. "Evelyn," I said, leaning forward, "I don't just want to clear David's name. I want them to regret this. Every sleepless night they've caused, every tear I've shed, every ounce of fear they've put in us. I want them to pay." Evelyn looked at me, assessing. Her expression was unreadable for a moment, then a slow nod. "Revenge isn't a legal term, Sarah, but pursuing substantial damages for defamation and malicious prosecution? Making them bear significant legal costs? Hitting them where it hurts, likely their pocketbooks and their pride. That's something the legal system can facilitate." She outlined the likely costs: a retainer fee up front, significant hourly rates for her and her team. A legal battle wouldn't be cheap. But we had some savings, and the principle felt worth any cost. David, though less outwardly focused on retribution than I was equally committed to fighting back. His quiet anger was just as potent as my fiery one. "We pursue maximum damages," I stated, my voice firm. "We make sure this costs them everything it possibly can." Evelyn explained the process. We would send a cease and desist letter, formally denying the accusations and warning them of the legal consequences of continuing to spread them or pursue baseless claims. If they didn't back down, we would file a lawsuit. Our suit would likely allege defamation for the accusations of theft and potentially intentional infliction of emotional distress, depending on how egregious their actions were. If they escalated to a formal, baseless legal action against David, we'd add malicious prosecution. The cease and desist letter was drafted and sent via certified mail and email. It was stark, factual, and delivered a clear message. We were not backing down, and we were prepared to fight. Their response was swift and predictable. A dismissive email from their own lawyer, a slick, expensive-looking firm in downtown Phoenix. Their lawyer reiterated the accusation, claimed they had irrefutable evidence, and stated they would pursue all available legal remedies if we did not cooperate. Cooperate meaning essentially admit guilt and pay them money David didn't have and hadn't taken. That email was the final straw. The die was cast. "File the suit, Evelyn," I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. The hurt was still there, deep beneath the surface, but it was encased in ice. "Let's begin." Filing the lawsuit felt like drawing a line in the sand with concrete. We were suing Aunt Carol, Uncle Robert, and Cousin Mark Peterson for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We demanded a formal retraction of their accusations, and we sought compensatory damages for harm to David's reputation and our emotional suffering, plus punitive damages, a significant amount intended to punish them and deter similar behavior. We asked for $10 million in punitive damages. It was a number designed to shock, to hurt, to make them understand the magnitude of what they had done. The legal process, I quickly learned, was not fast or glamorous like the movies. It was a slow, grinding war of attrition, fought with paperwork, deadlines, and carefully worded questions. First came the discovery phase. This was where both sides exchanged information. We sent them interrogatories, written questions they had to answer under oath, demanding they detail their irrefutable evidence, who they had told about their accusations, and the basis for their claims. They sent us questions about David's finances, our lifestyle, our communications. It felt invasive, but Evelyn assured me it was standard. Then came the depositions. This was the part I dreaded and anticipated in equal measure. Giving a deposition means answering questions under oath, with a court reporter transcribing everything. I went first, sitting across from their lawyer, a man with eyes like chips of ice, answering questions about my family, about David, about my feelings. It was draining. He tried to twist my words, to make my loyalty seem like willful blindness. But Evelyn was there, objecting when necessary, guiding me. Then it was David's turn. He was calm and collected, providing clear, factual answers, laying out his financial history, his movements, his digital footprint, none of which supported their claims. He answered every question honestly, exposing the flimsiness of their supposed evidence. Finally, it was their turn. Aunt Carol, Uncle Robert, and Mark were deposed separately. Evelyn warned me that while I wouldn't be in the room, only the lawyers, witness, and court reporter are typically present, I would receive the transcripts. And the transcripts became my fuel. Reading their testimonies was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. Their evidence amounted to suspicious timing around some trust transactions, which David, as my spouse, sometimes had visibility into for family planning discussions, but no control over. Misinterpreted digital logs, a simple, shared family cloud storage account became a nefarious transfer mechanism in their minds. And pure speculation, based on their unfounded belief that David was somehow financially struggling and opportunistic. Aunt Carol's deposition was a masterpiece of passive aggression and thinly veiled contempt. She spoke about how disappointed she was, how she never would have thought David was capable, while simultaneously doubling down on the certainty of his guilt, citing vague feelings and patterns. Uncle Robert was blustering and defensive, clearly annoyed at having to answer questions under oath. Mark was the worst, arrogant and smirking, implying that David had always been a bit of an outsider and that this confirmed his suspicions. Their testimonies didn't just lack evidence, they revealed their motivations. There were snippets about the family hierarchy, about who deserved the trust money more, about long-held grudges and jealousies I had never fully grasped. It became clear this wasn't just about the missing $500,000. It was about control, about power, and about a deep-seated desire to exclude David, and by extension, me, for choosing him, from the family's inner circle and its resources. They saw him as an easy target, someone they could blame to cover up something else, or simply to assert their dominance. The depositions were a turning point. They cemented my resolve. I saw their lies, their pettiness, their malice, written down. For the record, the hurt was still there, the loss of family devastating, but the desire for revenge burned brighter than ever. It wasn't just about proving David innocent, it was about making them pay for the emotional violence they had inflicted. We used the information from their depositions to file motions with the court. Evelyn explained that a motion for summary judgment asks the judge to rule in our favor without a full trial, arguing that based on the evidence gathered during discovery, including their own depositions, there was no genuine dispute of material fact, meaning their accusations were baseless, and our claims of defamation and potential malicious prosecution were valid. While we waited for the judge's ruling on our motion, the pressure mounted. The legal fees were substantial, a constant reminder of the financial burden this fight was placing on us. My parents were caught in the middle, heartbroken by the rift, unsure who to believe initially, though they eventually saw the truth and supported us unequivocally. Friends offered support, but the isolation from my extended family was profound. Holidays were awkward silences and deliberate exclusions. Family events became minefields I avoided. Through it all, David remained my anchor. This ordeal was harder on him in many ways. His name and integrity were under attack. He had moments of despair, wondering if his reputation would ever fully recover, even if we won. But he trusted me, and he trusted Evelyn. And he saw the fight in my eyes, the absolute refusal to let them win. The judge's ruling on our motion for summary judgment was a victory, but not the knockout punch I'd hoped for. The judge denied our motion for summary judgment on the defamation claim, stating that while their evidence was weak, whether their statements constituted defamation was a matter for a jury to decide. However, the judge granted our motion regarding their basis for the theft accusation, effectively ruling that they had presented no credible evidence that David had actually stolen the money. This was a huge win. It meant they couldn't prove he was a thief. It severely weakened their position and strengthened ours for a malicious prosecution claim if they were to pursue legal action against David based on this baseless accusation. It also paved the way for our defamation claim to move forward based on them making the false accusation. This ruling put immense pressure on my family. They could no longer hide behind the pretense of having concrete proof. Their case against David, which they hadn't even formally filed yet, but had threatened, was now demonstrably weak. Settlement negotiations began. Their lawyer contacted Evelyn, proposing mediation. Mediation is a process where a neutral third party helps the parties try to reach an agreement outside of court. I was hesitant. I didn't want to compromise. I wanted them to suffer the full consequences. But Evelyn advised that settlement was often faster and guaranteed, whereas a trial, even with a strong case, always carried some risk. More importantly, a settlement could include a formal apology and retraction, which was crucial for David's reputation. I agreed to mediate, but with strict conditions. I wanted a public, written apology and retraction, sent to everyone they had spoken to about the accusation. I wanted them to cover a significant portion of our legal fees, and I wanted a financial settlement that wasn't just symbolic. I wanted it to sting. The mediation session was tense. We were in separate rooms with our lawyers, and the mediator shuttled back and forth. The air crackled with unspoken accusations and years of buried family tension. Hearing their offers relayed by the mediator was infuriatingly insulting at first. A small sum, a half-hearted admission of misunderstanding. My revenge felt starved, but as the day wore on, the offers slowly increased. Evelyn was relentless, presenting the strength of our case, the judge's ruling, the potential for massive punitive damages if we went to trial, and the public humiliation they would face. She highlighted the inconsistencies in their depositions, the lack of evidence, the clear malice. Slowly, grudgingly, they started to yield. The turning point seemed to come when Evelyn explicitly laid out the likely outcome of a trial. David's complete vindication, their public shaming, and a jury potentially awarding the full $10 million in punitive damages, which could financially cripple them. Their final offer was substantial: a formal written apology and retraction, to be sent via certified mail and email to everyone they had accused David to. Full reimbursement of all our legal fees, $150,000 by this point, and an additional financial settlement of $750,000. In exchange, we would drop our lawsuit. Evelyn looked at me, raising an eyebrow. "It's a strong offer, Sarah. It covers your costs, provides significant compensation, gets the retraction you wanted, and prevents them from ever bringing this up again. It's more than just clearing David's name. It's a substantial financial consequence for them. It's comprehensive." I looked at the number, $750,000. Added to the $150,000 for fees, it was $900,000. It wasn't the $10 million punitive damages I had dreamed of, but it was a massive sum for them. It would likely require them to sell assets, perhaps even take out loans. It would hit them hard, right where I wanted it to. More importantly, the formal apology and retraction would be sent to their friends, our mutual acquaintances, potentially even business associates they had gossiped to. Their reputation would be damaged, not by lies like they had done to David, but by the truth of their own actions and subsequent humiliation. I thought of the sleepless nights, the stress, the fear, the lost family bonds. Could $1 million truly compensate for that? No. But it was a form of justice. It was a legal mechanism for delivering the pain they had inflicted. It was revenge, cold and hard, delivered via certified mail and bank transfer. "I accept," I said, the words feeling heavy and final. The settlement was signed. The money wasn't transferred instantly, and the apology didn't arrive the next day. There were more legal documents, more waiting. But eventually, the funds appeared in our account, and the certified letters, containing their forced, stilted apology and retraction, were sent. Reading their apology felt strangely anticlimactic. It was devoid of genuine remorse, clearly drafted by lawyers. But the fact that they had to send it, that they were legally obligated to admit they were wrong and retract their lies, was a victory. We received messages from people who had received the apology, confused friends asking what had happened, some expressing sympathy, others clearly still influenced by my family's initial poison, but unable to deny the written retraction. The damage to David's reputation wasn't instantly erased, but the foundation for rebuilding it was laid. The money sat in our account for a long time. We didn't touch it. It felt like blood money, a tangible representation of the pain and betrayal. Eventually, we used some of it to pay off our mortgage and set up a significant college fund for the children we hoped to have one day, a future they had tried to steal. The family bond was severed, perhaps irrevocably. There were no more holiday invitations, no more casual phone calls. My mother remained in contact, navigating the impossible situation with grace and sorrow. But Aunt Carol, Uncle Robert, and Mark became ghosts from a painful past. I heard snippets through the grapevine. They had indeed faced significant financial strain due to the settlement and legal fees. Their social standing had taken a hit. Was the revenge satisfying? Yes, in a cold, clinical way. I had achieved what I set out to do through the legal system. I had used their own tools, accusations and the threat of litigation, against them, but armed with truth and a formidable lawyer. I had made them pay, financially and reputationally, but it came at a cost. The family I had known was gone. The innocence of believing in unquestioning familial love was shattered. I was harder now, warier. The experience had left scars that no amount of money could erase. Yet, when I looked at David, secure in our home, his name cleared, our future protected by the financial buffer we had gained, I knew we had done the right thing. We had fought back against injustice and malice, and we had won. Not just the lawsuit, but our peace of mind. And for me, in that moment, watching the people who had tried to destroy us face the consequences of their actions, the bittersweet taste of victory was undeniably laced with the chilling satisfaction of revenge. They had underestimated me. They had paid the price, and I would never ever forgive them.